What would you do if you inherited a crumbling old house that was costing you more money than you had? Would you sell it immediately, or would you take the time to uncover its secrets first? For one desperate mother drowning in debt, that decision changed everything. Rebecca Collins was just days away from losing everything. A widow with two brilliant but troubled teenagers, working 3 jobs that still couldn't cover the mountain of medical bills her husband left behind. The inheritance seemed like a cruel joke, a decaying Victorian mansion in a town she'd never visited, from a great-aunt she'd only met once as a child. "Sell it," her friends advised. "You can't afford more problems." But something about the house called to her. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was intuition, or maybe it was the strange way her children, Zoe and Alex, were drawn to its weathered walls and hidden spaces. "Mom, there's something off about these dimensions," Alex had said, measuring tape in hand, eyes alight with curiosity for the first time since his father's death. This wall shouldn't be here. What her children discovered behind that wall wasn't just forgotten relics or family heirlooms. It was evidence of one of the greatest injustices in technological history, and proof that their forgotten great-aunt had silently changed the world without recognition or reward. The discovery would make them multi-millionaires overnight. But it would also make them targets of one of the most powerful corporations on the planet. Before we dive into their incredible story, let us know in the comments, have you ever wondered what secrets might be hiding in your family's past? Sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can immediately see. Rebecca Collins was 42 years old, a former architectural designer whose life had been unraveling thread by thread for 18 months. The rural New England hospital where her husband Thomas had spent his final days had sent their last notice. In 218th and 467.32 in outstanding medical bills, now heading to collections. The experimental treatments that had promised to save him from aggressive pancreatic cancer had only extended his suffering while draining their savings, maxing out their credit cards and mortgaging their modest suburban home. Now she was working 3 jobs, mornings at an architectural firm where she'd once been an associate partner, now demoted to drafting assistant, afternoons giving private art lessons to disinterested teenagers, and weekends at a hardware store where customers routinely asked to speak with someone who knows about tools. She was barely seeing her twins, barely sleeping, and barely keeping their damaged family functioning. Alex and Zoe, 16 years old and brilliant in their own ways, had each retreated into private worlds of grief. Alex, once headed for engineering scholarships, now spent hours disassembling household appliances only to leave them in pieces. Zoe, formerly a social butterfly, had grown silent and watchful, filling sketchbooks with intricate drawings she showed no one. They were all drowning separately in the same house. The final blow arrived on a Tuesday. Their mortgage company had sold their loan to a less forgiving bank, which was demanding the 3 months of missed payments immediately or foreclosure proceedings would begin. All Rebecca had left was $200 in an emergency account. Not even enough for 1 month's mortgage payment. That's when the letter arrived. Thick cream-colored stationery with a law firm's letterhead from Blackfield, Maine, a coastal town Rebecca had never visited. Inside was news that Vivian Blackwood, her great-aunt on her mother's side, had passed away at 94, leaving Rebecca her entire estate, which consisted primarily of a Victorian mansion called Thornwood House. "I met her once when I was 7, Rebecca told her children that evening, laying out the photos included with the letter. She was unusual, brilliant but eccentric, according to my mother. They had some falling out decades ago. The photos showed a commanding 3-story Victorian with a wraparound porch, turrets, and intricate gingerbread trim, all in obvious disrepair. Paint peeled from the clapboards, several windows were boarded up, and vines claimed one entire side of the structure. Great. A money pit, Zoe muttered, her first complete sentence in 3 days. Actually, Alex said, studying the property assessment. Also included in the packet, it's on 2 acres of coastal property. Even in bad condition, it's worth something. Rebecca nodded. The lawyer says we can sell it as is. Won't be enough to clear our debts completely, but it might keep us afloat until I can find better work. But that night, as Rebecca pored over the documents, something else caught her attention. Vivian had stipulated that Rebecca or her descendants must occupy the house for at least 30 days before selling it, or ownership would transfer to the Blackfield Historical Society. She never even sent a Christmas card, Rebecca whispered to the empty kitchen. Why leave me a house with strings attached? Her friends thought she was crazy when she explained her plan. You're going to uproot your kids from school to live in a decrepit old house for a month just to sell it? Her co-worker Janet asked over coffee. Rent it out or abandon it. What's the Historical Society going to do, sue you? But the lawyer had been clear. Blackfield was a small town where everyone knew everyone's business, attempting to circumvent. Vivian's wishes would tie up the property in litigation for years, so Rebecca requested a month's leave of absence from each job, citing family emergency. Only the architectural firm granted it. The others simply replaced her. She enrolled the twins in temporary remote learning programs and put their suburban house on the market at a desperate discount, hoping for a quick sale. Alex and Zoe reacted to the news with unexpected interest. The first positive emotion either had shown in months. I'd looked up Blackfield, Zoe said, showing Rebecca her laptop. It was a shipbuilding center in the 1800s, then became known for technology development during World War II. Great-Aunt Vivian's house was built in 1887 by Warren Thornwood, Alex added. He was an inventor who worked with Edison for a while. That's why it's called Thornwood House. The morning they left their suburban home for the last time, Rebecca felt a mixture of despair and strange relief. They were leaving the house where Thomas had died, where the 3 of them had become hollow versions of themselves. Maybe a change of scenery, even a temporary one, would help them begin healing. The drive to coastal Maine took nearly 7 hours. As they followed the GPS down increasingly narrow roads, the twins pressed their faces to the windows, watching as prim suburban developments gave way to wild coastline and dense forests. Turn right onto Blackwood Lane, the GPS instructed, and they found themselves on a narrow gravel drive that wound upward through ancient oaks. As they crested the hill, Thornwood House appeared before them, even more imposing than the photographs suggested. It looks like something from a horror movie, Zoe whispered, but she sounded more intrigued than frightened. The house loomed against the darkening sky, its multiple turrets and widow's walks creating a jagged silhouette. The wraparound porch sagged ominously on one side, and many of the ornate railings had collapsed. Yet even in its decayed state, there was undeniable beauty and craftsmanship in the detailed woodwork and soaring architecture. As Rebecca parked their car, an elderly man emerged from a modest cottage near the main gate. He approached slowly, leaning on a gnarled wooden cane. "You must be Vivian's great-niece," he called. "I'm Walter Bennett, caretaker. Miss Vivian said you'd come eventually." He studied the 3 of them with keen grey eyes. "She said you'd be the one to finally understand." "Understand what?" Rebecca asked. Walter's weathered face creased into a cryptic smile. "Why? What's hidden in the walls, of course. What Thornwood House has been protecting all these years." Walter insisted on showing them inside himself, despite Rebecca's protests that they could manage. He produced an ornate iron key from his pocket and unlocked the massive front door, which groaned on its hinges, as if announcing their arrival to the house itself. The musty scent of abandonment greeted them. Dust, old paper, and the lingering aroma of something Rebecca couldn't quite identify. lavender, perhaps, or some chemical she didn't recognize. Without electricity, the only light came from the setting sun through dirt-streaked windows and the flashlights they'd brought. "Main power's been off for years," Walter explained, his flashlight beam dancing across the grand foyer. Miss Vivian preferred oil lamps and candles in her later years, said electricity interfered with her thinking. The entrance revealed a sweeping staircase, intricately carved banisters, and a once magnificent chandelier now swathed in cobwebs. Doorways branched off in multiple directions, leading to shadowy rooms filled with sheet-covered furniture. "Vivian lived here alone?" Rebecca asked, trying to imagine her elderly great-aunt navigating this massive space. "Alone, yes, but not lonely," Walter replied cryptically. "She had her work." As they moved through the first floor, Rebecca's architects, I noted the remarkable craftsmanship, hand-carved moldings, parquet floors inlaid with multiple wood species, stained glass transoms above interior doorways. Despite years of neglect, the house's bones remained sound, its structure defying time. They discovered a grand library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a formal dining room that could seat 20, a conservatory with broken windows where plants had begun reclaiming the space, and a kitchen with an ancient cast-iron stove and peculiar copper fixtures, unlike any Rebecca had seen before. "Tomorrow I'll show you how to get the generator running for basic necessities," Walter said. "It's not conventional, but it works. Miss Vivian's design." "She was an engineer?" Rebecca asked. Walter hesitated. "She was many things, most of which the world never knew." He checked his pocket watch. "I should get back to my cottage before dark. The caretaker's quarters are yours if you want them. They're modernized, unlike the main house, but Miss Vivian was specific that you should stay here." After Walter left, Rebecca and the twins stood in the kitchen, the weight of their decision suddenly pressing down on them. "We don't have to do this," Rebecca said softly. "We could find a motel in town for tonight, figure something else out tomorrow." To her surprise, both teenagers shook their heads. "I want to stay," Zoe said firmly, the most decisive she'd sounded in months. "Great-Aunt Vivian left this place to us for a reason. Besides," Alex added pragmatically, "we're broke. We can't afford motels for a month." They decided to make camp in the library, which had two massive sofas that seemed the least dust-covered option. As Rebecca unpacked their sleeping bags, Alex wandered the room, running his fingers along the bookshelves. "Mum, look at these books," he called. "There's first editions of scientific texts from the 1800s, and these—" He pulled out a leather-bound journal. "These look like research notebooks." Rebecca joined him, examining the shelf. Dozens of identical leather journals were arranged chronologically, each spine marked with a year, stretching from 1935 to 2019. "Vivian's research diaries?" she wondered aloud, opening the earliest volume. The pages were filled with meticulous handwriting, technical diagrams, and mathematical equations that Rebecca couldn't begin to comprehend. Some passages were written in what appeared to be code or perhaps another language entirely. Meanwhile, Zoe had wandered to the far wall, where an enormous architectural drawing of Thornwood House was framed. "Mum, you should see this. It's the original blueprint." Rebecca joined her daughter, immediately captivated by the technical precision of the drawing. As an architect, she could appreciate the complexity of the design, the multiple wings, unusual room configurations, and intricate mechanical systems noted throughout. "This doesn't make sense," she murmured, studying the layout. "According to this, there should be another room behind the conservatory, but we didn't see any door." "And look at these dimensions," Alex said, joining them. He traced the measurements with his finger. "The second floor is shorter than the first by about 12 feet on the north side, but from outside, the walls align perfectly." That night, they slept fitfully in the library, the house settling around them with creaks and sighs that seemed almost conversational. Rebecca dreamed of narrow corridors behind the walls, of hidden rooms filled with light and strange machinery, and of a woman with Zoe's eyes writing feverishly in a leather-bound journal. In the morning, Walter returned as promised, bringing fresh bread, coffee, and instructions for the peculiar generator in the basement. The device looked like something from a science fiction film, a combination of antique components and modifications that appeared decades ahead of their time. Miss Vivian's adaptation of Tesla's designs, Walter explained, showing Alex how to prime the system. It draws power from the Earth itself, in a manner of speaking. Been running for 30 years without conventional fuel. That's impossible, Alex said. But his eyes shone with fascination as the machine hummed to life, illuminating the basement with light from bulbs that looked hand-blown. Later, as Rebecca attempted to create an inventory of repairs the house would need before selling, the twins explored the second floor. She could hear them above, their footsteps tracking from room to room, occasional exclamations suggesting new discoveries. It was Zoe who came running downstairs an hour later, excitement transforming her grief-hollowed face. "Mom, we found something," she called, breathless. Alex measured the master bedroom and the guest room next to it. There's a space between them, about 6 feet wide, but no door to access it. "An architectural void," Rebecca said, setting aside her clipboard. "Old houses often have them. Spaces created when layout plans changed during construction." "But Mom," Zoe insisted, "there's a draft coming from the baseboard. And listen." She produced her phone, playing an audio recording of faint but distinct mechanical clicking. Something's running inside that wall. As if responding to Zoe's words, the lights flickered momentarily throughout the house. "I think Great-Aunt Vivian left us a puzzle," Alex said, appearing at the top of the stairs. In his hand was a small brass key, unlike any modern design, discovered behind a loose panel in the master bedroom wardrobe. Etched into its handle was a single word: truth. The brass key fit nowhere they could find. Despite hours of searching, running their fingers along wainscoting and examining every door frame, no corresponding keyhole emerged. Rebecca felt a mix of frustration and intrigue. Her architectural training told her the hidden space between bedrooms was significant, yet the house stubbornly guarded its secrets. By their third day at Thornwood House, they'd established a routine. Mornings were spent making minimal repairs to make the house habitable. Afternoons devoted to exploration and investigation of Vivian's life and work. "Listen to this," Rebecca said, poring over one of the leather journals from 1952. "Today, I've successfully miniaturized the circuit to 1/4 the previously achievable size. EM continues to dismiss the application potential, claiming market limitations, short-sighted as always, valuing profit margins over innovation." EM. Alex looked up from the collection of small mechanical parts he'd found in a workshop off the kitchen. "Edison motors, maybe," Zoe suggested, sketching the unusual gear system Alex had assembled. Rebecca shook her head. "Edison died in 1931. This is 1952. They decided to seek answers in town. Blackfield proved to be a picturesque coastal community of perhaps 3,000 residents, its main street lined with meticulously preserved 19th-century storefronts. The library occupied a former sea captain's mansion overlooking the harbor. Marion Whitaker, the town librarian, peered at them over cat-eye glasses when they inquired about Vivian Blackwood. "Vivian's relatives," she exclaimed, closing her book. "How wonderful! We feared her legacy would be lost when she passed." "Legacy?" Rebecca asked. Marion glanced around the nearly empty library, then lowered her voice. "Follow me to the local history room." She led them to a small room lined with archives dominated by a massive oak table. From a locked cabinet, she retrieved a folder labeled Blackwood-Thornwood Chronicles. "Most tourists come for our maritime history," Marion explained, spreading newspaper clippings across the table. Few realized Blackfield was briefly at the forefront of American technological innovation. The yellowed articles told fragments of a story that left Rebecca stunned. Warren Thornwood, the house's original owner, had been a contemporary of Tesla and Edison. His work focused on electrical transmission and storage systems. After his death in 1922, the house passed to his laboratory assistant, Vivian's father, who continued the research in relative obscurity. "Vivian was a prodigy," Marion said, showing them a photograph from 1938 of a serious young woman standing beside a complex apparatus. MIT educated in physics and electrical engineering when few women were admitted. During World War II, she worked on classified government projects. Afterward, she returned to Blackfield and became reclusive. "Why isn't she famous if she was so brilliant?" Zoe asked. Marion's expression tightened. The simplest answer: she was a woman in a field dominated by men who took credit for women's work. The more complicated answer involves Elias Merrick. The name meant nothing to Rebecca, but Marion pulled out another series of clippings featuring a distinguished-looking man with cold eyes and an imperious expression. "Merrick Electronics," Marion explained, "a major defense contractor in the 50s and 60s, now evolved into Merrick Global Technologies. Elias was their founder and CEO until his death in 1985. His grandson, Peter Merrick, runs the company today." "Was Merrick my great-aunt's employer?" Rebecca asked. Marion laughed without humor. "Rival would be more accurate, or perhaps thief." The articles painted a disturbing picture. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, Merrick Electronics had patented numerous innovations in miniaturization, signal processing, and wireless transmission, foundational technologies for modern computing and communications. Meanwhile, Vivian had filed multiple patent interference claims, all ultimately unsuccessful. Vivian maintained that Merrick stole her designs, Marion said, but she lacked the resources to fight his legal team. Eventually, she stopped trying to patent her work altogether and retreated to Thornwood House. If she couldn't patent her inventions, what did she do with them? Alex asked. "That's the mystery, isn't it?" Marion smiled enigmatically. Vivian continued working until her final days. Some say she built things decades ahead of their time, but kept them hidden within Thornwood's walls. On their drive back to the house, Rebecca was uncharacteristically silent, processing this new information. Her great-aunt wasn't merely eccentric, she was potentially one of the unsung geniuses of the 20th century, her contributions erased by corporate theft and gender discrimination. Back at Thornwood, they found Walter pruning the overgrown rose garden. When questioned about Elias Merrick, his weathered face hardened. "Merrick visited many times in the early days," he confirmed. "All charm and promises until Vivian refused to sell her radio wave modulation system. After that, her work would mysteriously appear in Merrick's patent applications months later." "How did he get her designs?" Rebecca asked. Walter's gaze drifted to the house's upper windows. "Industrial. Espionage wasn't sophisticated then. Someone broke in several times. After the third burglary, Vivian started hiding her most important work. In the walls," Alex ventured. Walter smiled faintly. "Thornwood House isn't just a house, young man. It's a puzzle box. Warren Thornwood built secret passages and hidden rooms throughout, originally to hide his more controversial experiments from his competitors. Vivian expanded the system considerably. As evening approached, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows crawled slowly past the property, pausing briefly at the gate before continuing down the road. "That's the third time today," Walter murmured, watching it disappear around the bend. That night, as thunderstorms rolled in from the Atlantic, the house seemed particularly alive with creaks and whispers. Unable to sleep, Rebecca revisited the original blueprints, comparing them with her own measurements and notes. The proportions are deliberately misleading, she realized, tracing the measurements with her finger. These dimensions don't add up, not because of errors, but by design. A flash of lightning illuminated the library, and for just a moment, Rebecca thought she saw a figure standing in the doorway, a tall woman with Zoe's eyes and a knowing smile. When she blinked, the apparition was gone. In the morning, they found the brass key had moved from where Alex had left it on the library table. It now lay precisely centered on the blueprint, pointing to a section of the drawing they hadn't previously scrutinized, the conservatory floor. "I don't believe in ghosts," Rebecca told the twins over breakfast, "but I'm starting to think Great-Aunt Vivian is trying to tell us something." The conservatory floor yielded its secret by mid-morning. Beneath years of dirt and dead leaves, Alex discovered an unusual pattern in the tile mosaic. Constellations, Rebecca realized, arranged not as they appeared in the night sky, but in a deliberate cipher. At the center, where Polaris should be, a small metal disc was embedded in the stonework. "It's not a keyhole," Zoe said, studying it, "more like a pressure plate." After careful cleaning, they saw it was engraved with the same stylized T that appeared throughout the house, the Thornwood family emblem. "The key doesn't fit here," Alex said, frustrated, "but I think—" He pressed the brass key flat against the metal disc. A soft click echoed through the conservatory, followed by a mechanical whirring from beneath the floor. A section of tiled flooring, perhaps 3 feet square, receded and slid away, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Rebecca stared at the opening. "That's not on any blueprint." "I think that's the point," Zoe whispered. Flashlights in hand, they descended the narrow metal stairs. 20 feet down, they emerged into a space that took Rebecca's breath away, a perfectly preserved laboratory straight out of the 1960s, untouched by time. Glass-fronted cabinets lined the walls, filled with meticulous rows of components and prototype devices. Workbenches held half-completed projects under dust covers. Drafting tables displayed technical drawings far more advanced than anything in the main house. "Holy," Alex breathed, spinning slowly to take it all in. "This is incredible." At the center of the room stood a large machine, unlike anything Rebecca had ever seen. Copper coils surrounding a glass cylinder, connected to what appeared to be early computing equipment. Handwritten labels identified various components, but the terminology was unfamiliar even to Alex's tech-savvy mind. "Quantum resonance calibrator," he read from one panel. "Molecular destabilizer array, phase shift inductor." "Look at these," Zoe called, examining framed documents on one wall. "Patents, dozens of them, all filed by Vivian, dating from 1947 to 1964. The patents covered innovations in miniaturized electronics, signal processing, energy transmission and computing, technologies that underpinned modern smartphones, satellite communications, even certain medical devices. Alongside each patent hung a newspaper clipping or company announcement showing nearly identical technology later invented by Merrick Electronics. She kept records of everything they stole, Rebecca realized. A large safe occupied one corner, its door ajar. Inside, they found leather portfolios containing original schematics, working prototypes, and laboratory notebooks. Physical proof that these inventions had originated with Vivian, predating Merrick's patents by months or years. "This is worth—" Alex trailed off, unable to quantify it. "Billions," Rebecca finished, her mind reeling. If these can prove Vivian was the original inventor, the patent rights and retroactive royalties would be astronomical. They spent hours examining the underground laboratory, cataloguing discoveries too numerous to fully comprehend. But one document stood out, a letter from 1973, written by Vivian to Rebecca's mother. "My dearest niece, I know we have grown distant, but blood remains blood. What I have created here will someday change everything, but powerful people have already stolen too much. The true legacy is hidden where only family can find it. When the time comes, your daughter will understand. She has the Thornwood mind. She knew, Rebecca whispered. Somehow she knew you two would be the ones to find this. When they finally emerged from the hidden laboratory, the sun was setting, and a black Lexus SUV was parked in their driveway. A tall man in an expensive suit stood conversing with Walter near the gardens. Walter's stance was rigid, his expression carefully neutral as he spotted them emerging from the conservatory. With a subtle gesture, he directed their visitors' attention toward the main house, away from them. Inside, quickly, Rebecca whispered to the twins, lock the conservatory entrance. From the library window, they watched the interaction. The visitor handed Walter a business card, which Walter pocketed without looking at it. After several minutes of conversation, the man returned to his vehicle and departed. Who was that? Rebecca asked when Walter joined them inside. Peter Merrick, Walter said grimly, grandson of Elias and current CEO of Merrick Global Technologies, expressed his condolences on Vivian's passing and his interest in purchasing Thornwood House for historical preservation. Why now? Zoe asked. Great-aunt Vivian died months ago. Because they know we're here, Rebecca realized. They've been watching the property. Maybe they've always been watching, waiting for Vivian to die so they could acquire the house and anything hidden inside. Walter nodded. Merrick offered $2 million, cash. No questions asked. Immediate closing. Rebecca's breath caught. $2 million would solve every financial problem their family faced, with plenty to spare. College funds for the twins, a new home, freedom from debt. All their worries erased with a signature. What did you tell him? She asked. That. I'd pass along his offer, Walter said. I've bought you some time, but he'll be back. Men like Merrick don't accept rejection easily. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. The possibility of financial salvation warred with the growing certainty that her great-aunt's legacy deserved justice, not burial. She found herself in the library, again reading through more of Vivian's journals. An entry from 1985 caught her attention. Elias Merrick was found dead today, heart attack at 68. His empire passes to his son Gerald, who lacks his father's ruthlessness but shares his moral flexibility. My greatest work remains secure. The quantum communications array is decades ahead of anything they've stolen thus far. They would kill to possess it, which is precisely why. It must remain hidden until the right hands can protect it. A knock at the front door startled Rebecca from her reading. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in her 30s, with a severe bob haircut and sharp, intelligent eyes. Ms. Collins, I'm Dr. Eleanor Chen, MIT Engineering Department, the woman said, when Rebecca cautiously opened the door. I was Vivian Blackwood's last research assistant. I think you're in danger, and I need to show you something immediately. Dr. Eleanor Chen refused to speak inside the house. Instead, she led Rebecca to the garden, where the night breeze ensured their voices wouldn't carry. Vivian suspected Thornwood was bugged decades ago, she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. Merrick's people are sophisticated. We can't assume any conversation indoors is private. Rebecca's skin prickled with unease. How did you know we were here? Walter called me, Eleanor said. We've stayed in touch since Vivian's death. When you found the laboratory, he knew it was time. Eleanor had been Vivian's research assistant for the final 8 years of her life, one of the few outsiders trusted with knowledge of her work. As a brilliant engineer in her own right, she'd helped Vivian document the full extent of Merrick. Electronics intellectual property theft over 7 decades. What Vivian created goes beyond stolen patents, Eleanor explained. Her quantum communications technology would revolutionize global data transmission, unhackable, instantaneous connection across any distance with minimal power requirements. That's impossible, Rebecca said. Even modern quantum computing, is in its infancy, Eleanor smiled faintly. Vivian operated decades ahead of conventional science. The patents you found in the lab are valuable, but they're also a distraction, breadcrumbs she left deliberately. The real prize is the QC array, and Merrick wants it, desperately. Their entire business model depends on controlling the next generation of communications infrastructure. Vivian's technology would render their current multi-billion-dollar investments obsolete overnight. Back inside, they found Alex and Zoe still awake, examining components from the hidden lab. Eleanor assessed them with keen interest, particularly when Alex demonstrated his intuitive understanding of Vivian's unusual mechanical designs. "The Thornwood mind," she murmured. "Vivian was right about you." "So what do we do now?" Rebecca asked. "I've got a millionaire offering cash for this property and apparently surveillance devices in my walls. Meanwhile, we found evidence of corporate theft potentially worth billions, but no idea how to prove it legally after all these years." Eleanor's expression hardened. "We find the QC array. With it, we can prove everything, not just historical patent infringement, but active corporate espionage." Vivian documented everything meticulously. The following morning brought a certified letter from Blackfield Municipal Court. Rebecca opened it with trembling hands, while the twins and Eleanor watched anxiously. "They're challenging our ownership of the property," she said, skimming the legal jargon, claiming Vivian wasn't mentally competent when she updated her will last year. "Standard Merrick tactics," Eleanor said grimly. "They'll bury you in legal challenges while searching for what they want." A second vehicle pulled into the driveway, Walter's ancient pickup truck, accompanied by a pristine Tesla. The man who emerged from the electric vehicle was perhaps 60, distinguished with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. James Montgomery. Eleanor identified him. Patent attorney, specialized in intellectual property disputes against major corporations. "Vivian's attorney," Walter added as they approached the house. "He's been waiting for this moment for 30 years. Montgomery wasted no time on pleasantries. After brief introductions, he spread documents across the library table. Vivian's legal strategy, prepared decades in advance. Vivian knew exactly what would happen when she died, he explained. Merrick would move to acquire Thornwood and everything inside it. She prepared accordingly. The legal documents revealed Vivian's meticulous planning. She had established a trust that would activate only when her heirs discovered specific evidence within Thornwood House. The trust contained funds for legal battles and predetermined strategies for asserting patent rights. "Fascinating planning," Rebecca said, "but it doesn't solve our immediate problem. We have maybe 2 weeks before Merrick's legal challenge forces us out of the house." "Unless you find the QC array," Montgomery countered. "That's the key to everything. With it, we can file immediate injunctions that would freeze all proceedings." As they strategized, Alex and Zoe had been unusually quiet, conferring in whispers at the far end of the library. Finally, Alex approached the table. "I think I know how to find it," he said. "The brass key labeled Truth. It doesn't open. A door. It's a decryption key for Vivian's journals," he demonstrated with one of the leather-bound volumes, revealing how the unusual notches in the key aligned with certain repeated symbols in Vivian's coded entries. "It's a substitution cipher," Zoe added. "Once you have the key pattern, you can translate everything she wrote in code." Eleanor looked impressed. "Of course, Vivian always said encryption was humanity's oldest technology." They spent the day decoding entries from Vivian's final journals. By evening, they had assembled a series of clues pointing to the northeast tower, a part of the house they'd avoided due to its apparent structural instability. As dusk approached, 2 more black SUVs drove slowly past the property. Walter, watching from the gatehouse, reported that men with surveying equipment were photographing the grounds. "They're preparing," Montgomery said. "We need to move faster." That night, equipped with flashlights and Eleanor's electronic scanning tools, they ventured into the northeast tower. The wooden stairs creaked ominously underfoot, debris littering each step. This instability is deliberate, Rebecca realized. Examining the architecture, it's designed to appear unsafe while remaining structurally sound. At the top landing, they found a circular room with windows facing each cardinal direction. Nothing appeared unusual until Eleanor's scanner detected an electromagnetic anomaly beneath the floorboards. "There's something active down there," she said, "drawing power." After careful examination, Alex discovered a recessed panel in the wall bearing the Thornwood emblem. When pressed, it revealed a numeric keypad, technology that seemed oddly modern compared to the house's other hidden mechanisms. "What's the code?" Rebecca wondered aloud. Zoe, who'd been studying the room's unusual proportions, noticed something. "The window panels, they're arranged like a calendar. Look at how the lead muntins divide the glass." Indeed, the windows contained a pattern that, when interpreted as numbers, formed a sequence. 7 to 17, 1954. July 17th, 1954, Eleanor breathed. The day Vivian filed her first patent interference claim against Merrick. Alex entered the numbers. The keypad flashed green, and a section of flooring slid away silently, revealing a gleaming metal chamber that contrasted sharply with the towers. Apparent decay. As they prepared to descend, Rebecca's phone chimed with a text from Walter. "Urgent. Merrick obtained emergency court order. Sheriff coming tomorrow morning to evict under pretext of dangerous structural conditions. Officials already bribed. Must find proof tonight." "How did they move so quickly?" Rebecca asked, stunned. Montgomery's expression darkened. "Money and influence. This is exactly what Vivian predicted. We have until dawn." The metal chamber beneath the tower floor housed technology that seemed impossible. Unlike the vintage equipment in the conservatory laboratory, this facility appeared startlingly modern, perhaps even beyond current standards. Gleaming surfaces, holographic displays, and components Rebecca couldn't begin to identify filled the circular room. "This can't be real," she whispered. "Some of this technology doesn't even exist yet." "It exists here," Eleanor said, approaching, a central pedestal with reverence. "This is the QC array, or at least its control interface." The pedestal contained what looked like a crystalline cube, roughly 6 inches on each side, suspended within an electromagnetic field. The cube shimmered with internal light, patterns flowing across its surface like living data. "Quantum crystalline matrix," Eleanor explained, fingers hovering but not touching the device. "Vivian theorized it decades ago. Molecular-level information, storage and transmission. The scientific community still considers it theoretical." Alex studied the surrounding equipment. "This isn't just a prototype, it's operational. Look at these monitoring stations. They're tracking active data flows." Eleanor nodded. Vivian had remote monitoring nodes installed around the world. The system has been gathering evidence of Merrick's corporate espionage for years, documenting every instance of them stealing her derivative technologies. "So we have our proof," Rebecca said. "Now what?" "We need to access the data," Eleanor replied. Vivian would have created a protocol for this exact situation. As they sought to understand the system, Montgomery received a call from a contact in the courthouse. His expression grew increasingly grave. "Merrick's moving faster than anticipated," he reported. "They've convinced a judge that the property presents imminent danger to occupants. The sheriff will be here at first light with structural engineers, all on Merrick's payroll. They'll declare the house unsafe and force immediate evacuation." "How is that even legal?" Rebecca demanded. "It's not, but by the time we challenge it, they'll have had access to the property. That's all they need." Outside, the distant rumble of thunder punctuated their predicament. A spring storm was rolling in. from the Atlantic, mirroring the crisis they faced. While Eleanor and Alex worked to access the QC array's data, Zoe made a discovery in Vivian's final journal entries. "Listen to this," she said. "Protocol Heimdall represents my final safeguard. Should Thornwood fall to enemy hands, the Bifrost sequence will transmit all accumulated evidence to designated secure repositories worldwide. The ethical applications of quantum communication must not be monopolized or weaponized." "Heimdall and Bifrost," Alex murmured. "Norse mythology. Heimdall was the watchman of the gods, and Bifrost was the rainbow bridge connecting realms." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Of course, it's a dead man's switch. If Merrick takes possession of Thornwood, the system automatically distributes all evidence beyond their reach." They searched the interface for anything related to Protocol Heimdall, but the system architecture was unlike any conventional computer. Hours passed with minimal progress as the storm intensified outside, lightning illuminating the tower room in irregular flashes. At 3 a.m., disaster struck. The house's power failed completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by their flashlights. Even the QC array's interface dimmed, switching to some form of backup power. "This is deliberate," Montgomery said. "Merrick's people cutting utilities to force us out before morning." Walter arrived minutes later, soaked from the rain. "They've blocked the road with a downed tree. Utility crews can't get through until morning." Convenient timing. The QC array continued operating on its internal power, but access to its data seemed increasingly impossible before their deadline. As Rebecca contemplated their options, a tremendous crack of lightning struck terrifyingly close, followed by an ominous splintering sound from above. "The roof!" Walter shouted, as water began pouring through a new gap in the tower ceiling. The situation deteriorated rapidly. The ancient timbers, already weakened by decades of neglect, couldn't withstand the sudden influx of water. Structural supports began to groan ominously. "We need to evacuate," Rebecca insisted, maternal instinct overriding everything else. "The evidence isn't worth risking your lives." "Wait," Alex said, studying the crystalline cube with sudden inspiration. "The lightning. It's affecting the cube's energy pattern. Look." Indeed, with each lightning strike, the flow of light within the crystal shifted, revealing new patterns. "It's responding to the electromagnetic pulses," Eleanor realized, just like in Vivian's paper on resonance activation. As if confirming her words, the next lightning strike coincided with a transformation in the cube. It pulsed with brilliant light, and a holographic interface manifested above it, a simple prompt reading, "Voice authentication required." Eleanor leaned forward. "Vivian Blackwood, Protocol Heimdall." Nothing happened. "She wouldn't use her own voice," Zoe reasoned. "Too obvious." Rebecca suddenly remembered the letter to her mother. "Blood remains blood." With certainty she couldn't explain, she spoke clearly. "Rebecca Collins, blood of Thornwood." The cube flashed acceptance. "Protocol Heimdall initiated. Bifrost sequence requires physical authentication." A small drawer opened in the pedestal, revealing an indentation shaped like a hand. "It needs a Blackwood," Eleanor whispered. "Genetic confirmation." Rebecca placed her hand in the depression. Nothing happened. Then she understood. Vivian had specified her daughter would understand. "Zoe, Alex, both of you, together." The twins exchanged glances, then placed their hands atop their mothers. The crystal cube pulsed with blinding intensity, and a mechanical voice announced, "Authentication accepted. Executing Bifrost protocol." The holographic display expanded dramatically, showing a global map with dozens of points illuminating across continents. Data streams flowed between them, representing information being transmitted simultaneously, worldwide. "It's working," Eleanor breathed. The evidence is being distributed to secure repositories, universities, research institutions, patent offices, regulatory agencies, and media outlets worldwide. A final message appeared: transmission complete, quantum entanglement established, evidence secured, justice protocol initiated. As if in response, their phones simultaneously chimed. With news alerts, despite the early hour, breaking news was spreading rapidly. Massive data leak exposes decades of corporate espionage by Merrick Global Technologies. Through the broken roof, dawn light began to penetrate the storm clouds. Their deadline had arrived, but it no longer mattered. The truth was beyond Merrick's reach. Walter's phone rang. "Sheriff's Department just called," he reported with a smile. "They're postponing this morning's inspection indefinitely. Seems they've got more pressing concerns regarding Merrick Global." As if on cue, a massive section of the tower roof collapsed with a thunderous crash. Rebecca pulled the twins back just in time, watching in horror as debris plummeted toward the QC array. But instead of destruction, the falling timbers and slate simply stopped, suspended in midair inches above the crystalline cube. The suspended debris wasn't the only impossibility manifesting before their eyes. The crystalline cube had begun to transform, expanding its energy field to encompass the entire chamber. Within this shimmering barrier, the broken sections of roof and debris slowly, impossibly, reversed their trajectory, floating upward and reassembling themselves into their original positions. "Self-healing architecture," Eleanor whispered in awe. "Vivian theorized quantum-influenced matter manipulation, but I never thought she'd actually achieved it." As the structural damage repaired itself, the cube projected a holographic message. Vivian herself, looking exactly as she had in her later years. The recording was so perfectly three-dimensional, it seemed she stood among them. "If you're seeing this message, the Bifrost Protocol has been successfully initiated," holographic Vivian said, her eyes seeming to focus directly on Rebecca. "The quantum crystalline matrix doesn't just store and transmit information. It can influence matter at the subatomic level within its field radius. Thornwood House is now protected from physical damage or interference." The hologram shifted, displaying decades of meticulously documented evidence, meetings, recordings, stolen blueprints, and side-by-side comparisons of Vivian's original designs, with Merrick's innovations released months or years later. For 70 years, Elias Merrick and his successors systematically stole my work. Vivian's message continued. Not just the communication technologies, but energy systems, medical applications, even theoretical physics breakthroughs they've kept buried because they threatened existing profit structures. The hologram indicated the monitoring stations surrounding the quantum matrix. The QC array has been gathering proof since its activation in 1985. Now, this evidence has been transmitted simultaneously to over 100 secure locations worldwide through quantum entanglement channels that cannot be intercepted or blocked. By mid-morning, the global impact was becoming clear. News networks worldwide were reporting on what they called the Blackwood Files, the most comprehensive corporate espionage expose in history. Merrick Global Technologies stock plummeted 78% within hours of trading, triggering market-wide circuit breakers. Peter Merrick's carefully cultivated public image as a visionary tech leader evaporated as video evidence showed his direct involvement in continuing his grandfather's tradition of intellectual property theft. Federal agents were reportedly executing search warrants at Merrick headquarters in Boston, New York, and Silicon Valley. Standing in what was now a perfectly restored tower room, Rebecca watched the news reports on her phone with a mixture of vindication and disbelief. "What happens now?" she asked Montgomery, who had been fielding calls from regulatory agencies, major law firms, and media outlets non-stop since dawn. Legally, the largest patent infringement case in history, he replied, looking energized despite the sleepless night. The statute of limitations would normally have expired on the oldest violations, but there are exceptions for cases of deliberate concealment and ongoing conspiracy, both of which we can now prove definitively. Eleanor's assessment was more direct. Merrick Global Technologies won't survive this. The question isn't whether they'll face justice, but how many other corporations connected to them will fall too. By afternoon, the driveway of Thornwood House had become an impromptu media encampment. Satellite trucks lined the road, while reporters delivered live updates with the Victorian mansion as their backdrop. Walter, showing unexpected skill, managed the situation, keeping journalists at the gate while coordinating with local police. To maintain order, inside, the family gathered in the library with their newfound allies, attempting to process everything that had happened. "I still don't understand why Vivian left everything to us specifically," Rebecca said. "She could have entrusted this to Eleanor or James, who actually knew her and understood her work." "Because of that," Zoe said, pointing to the family portrait Rebecca had brought from their old home. It showed Rebecca as a child with her parents. "Look at Mom's eyes in that picture, then look at the portrait of Vivian in the hall." The resemblance was striking. The same unusual grey-green eyes with the distinctive central heterochromia that both twins had inherited. "The Thornwood mind," Alex murmured. Montgomery confirmed what they were realizing. Vivian believed certain cognitive abilities ran in the Thornwood bloodline, particularly spatial reasoning and pattern recognition, abilities that would be necessary to find and understand what she'd hidden. She needed family she could trust, Eleanor added, but also family with the right abilities. "When she met you as a child, Rebecca, she recognized those traits. She's been planning this for decades." Late that evening, as reporters finally departed and an eerie calm settled over Thornwood House, Rebecca found Walter sitting on the repaired porch, gazing at the starlit sky. "You knew everything all along," she said, not as an accusation but a realization. Walter smiled faintly. "Not everything. Vivian compartmentalized her contingencies. I knew my role, to maintain the property, to watch for the right moment, to contact Eleanor when you discovered the laboratory. The rest," he gestured vaguely toward the tower, "that was beyond my clearance level." "Why did you stay all these years?" "Because I believed in her vision," he said simply. Vivian understood that technology should serve humanity, not just the privileged few who can afford it. What she created in that tower isn't just a communication system. It's the foundation for a more equitable technological future. Inside, Montgomery was explaining the likely financial implications to the twins. The patent rights alone are conservatively valued. At $30 billion, retrospective royalties could double that figure. Then there's the matter of punitive damages, which, in a case of this magnitude— Rebecca stopped listening, the numbers becoming abstract beyond a certain point. Her mind was still processing a more immediate reality. Her family would never struggle financially again. The home they'd been about to lose, the college education that had seemed impossible for the twins, the medical bills and debts that had been crushing them, all of it now insignificant. As she gazed out at the property that had seemed like a burden just days ago, Rebecca felt a strange sense of purpose settling over her. This inheritance wasn't just about money or even justice for Vivian. It was about responsibility. The technology in that tower could transform global communication, renewable energy, even medicine, Eleanor had explained. But it could also be weaponized, monopolized, or suppressed if it falls into the wrong hands. Exactly what Vivian fought against her entire life. Rebecca understood now why Vivian had chosen them. not just to expose Merrick's crimes, but to shepherd her true legacy, innovations that could benefit humanity rather than exploit it. As if affirming her thoughts, the quantum matrix beneath the tower pulsed with light visible through the windows, briefly illuminating the entire property with an ethereal glow. 3 months transformed everything. The same news cycles that had once ignored Vivian Blackwood's brilliance now couldn't get enough of her story. The reclusive female genius whose groundbreaking inventions had been systematically stolen for 7 decades, only to achieve posthumous vindication through her great-niece's family. The legal aftermath moved with unprecedented speed. Facing irrefutable evidence and multiple federal investigations, Merrick Global Technologies agreed to a historic settlement, $18.7 billion in compensation, full transfer of all patent rights derived from Vivian's work, and a public acknowledgement of corporate wrongdoing spanning 3 generations of leadership. Peter Merrick resigned in disgrace. The company itself was being dismantled, its assets sold off to satisfy shareholder lawsuits and government penalties. What had once been a technological empire built on stolen innovations was collapsing like a house of cards. For Rebecca and the twins, the transformation was equally dramatic, but more personal. Their financial struggles evaporated overnight. The preliminary settlement funds alone, $120 million transferred immediately while the larger agreement was finalized, eliminated any concerns about their future security. Yet money proved the least significant aspect of their inheritance. Thornwood House itself had undergone a metamorphosis. The quantum matrix beneath the tower continued to expand its influence, gradually restoring the entire property to its original grandeur. Rotted wood renewed itself, broken glass reassembled, faded paint refreshed, all without human intervention. Scientists from around the world petitioned to study the phenomenon, but for now, the family maintained their privacy. The house was never just a house, Eleanor explained as they watched the conservatory's shattered glass dome regenerate itself. It's integrated with the quantum matrix, a proving ground for Vivian's theories about matter manipulation at the subatomic level. Rebecca found herself embracing a new role she'd never anticipated, guardian of Vivian's legacy. With Eleanor's guidance and Montgomery's legal expertise, she established the Blackwood Innovation Trust, dedicated to developing and ethically deploying Vivian's technologies. Their first initiative, using quantum communications to provide free, unhackable internet access to underserved communities worldwide. Alex, whose engineering intuition had helped unlock Thornwood's secrets, thrived with access to Vivian's complete archives. At 16, he was already collaborating with quantum physicists 3 times his age, his understanding of Vivian's work seemingly instinctive. "It's like I've been waiting my whole life to find this," he told Rebecca one evening, looking up from schematics that would have been incomprehensible to most doctoral candidates. "Like part of my brain was designed specifically to understand what she created." Zoe's transformation was more subtle but equally profound. The artistic talent she'd once kept private now found expression in translating Vivian's theories into visual models that helped others comprehend concepts beyond conventional physics. Her detailed illustrations of quantum principles became teaching tools at universities worldwide. The family had decided to make Thornwood their permanent home, its once forbidding silhouette now a symbol of reclaimed legacy and unexpected purpose. The hidden laboratory beneath the conservatory became Alex's workshop, while Zoe claimed the restored tower room as her studio. Rebecca converted the library into the headquarters of the Blackwood Trust, coordinating with research teams across 5 continents. Walter remained as well, his role evolving from caretaker to historian and guide, as Thornwood became a pilgrimage site for scientists and technology journalists. He seemed to age backward as the house renewed itself, his stooped posture straightening, his movements more vigorous with each passing week. The matrix affects living tissue differently than inorganic matter, Eleanor theorized, observing this phenomenon. Vivian's journals suggest it might harmonize cellular regeneration. One warm evening in early autumn, Rebecca sat on the wraparound porch, watching fireflies dance above the now immaculate gardens. 6 months earlier, she'd been working 3 jobs, drowning in debt, watching her children withdraw into grief and hopelessness. Now those same children were flourishing, their unique abilities recognized and nurtured. "You look contemplative," said a familiar voice. Montgomery, James, as she now called him, joined her on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Their professional relationship had gradually warmed into something more personal over the months of working together to establish the trust. His steady presence had become a cornerstone of their new life, his wisdom helping navigate the complexities of sudden wealth and public scrutiny. "I was thinking about Thomas," Rebecca admitted, accepting the glass. "What he would make of all this." "Your husband would be proud," James said gently, "not of the money or recognition, but of how you've guided Alex and Zoe through this transformation." Rebecca nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Sometimes I feel guilty for being happy again so soon after losing him." "Healing isn't betrayal," James replied. "I think Thomas would understand that better than anyone." Inside the house, they could hear Zoe playing the grand piano in the music room, another talent she'd rediscovered since coming to Thornwood. The melancholy tunes that had dominated her early weeks had gradually shifted to more complex, hopeful compositions. Their conversation was interrupted by Alex bursting onto the porch, tablet in hand, his expression electric with excitement. "Mom, the prototype worked. The miniaturized quantum matrix successfully transmitted data between New York and Tokyo instantaneously. 0 latency, completely secure. The MIT team is going crazy." This was the first practical implementation of Vivian's technology outside Thornwood, a crucial milestone in proving its commercial viability. Rebecca felt a surge of pride, not just in Alex, but in the multi-generational legacy they were building. Later that night, after the celebrations and technical discussions had wound down, Rebecca found herself alone in what had been Vivian's personal study. Among the books and journals, a single photograph held a place of honor. Vivian as a young woman standing proudly before Thornwood House, its structure then pristine and new to her ownership. Rebecca spoke softly to the image, a habit she'd developed over the months. "We're doing it, Vivian. Your work is changing the world, finally getting the recognition it deserves." As had happened occasionally since the activation of the quantum matrix, she felt rather than heard a response. Not words precisely, but a sense of profound satisfaction and approval that seemed to emanate from the house itself. Outside her window, the quantum-enhanced gardens bloomed with impossible flowers, Vivian's hybridized creations coming to life again after decades of dormancy, their luminescent petals glowing softly in the moonlight, like the family now tending them. They had merely been waiting for the right conditions to flourish. 6 months after the Blackwood files went public, the technological landscape was transforming at a pace that left even industry veterans breathless. The first commercial applications of Vivian's quantum communication technology rolled out under the Blackwood Trust's careful oversight. Unhackable data transmission systems for hospitals, infrastructure protection, and humanitarian organizations. Unlike conventional tech rollouts focused on profit maximization, Rebecca insisted on prioritizing social impact over financial returns. Rural communities in developing nations received the same cutting-edge systems being installed in major metropolitan centers. The Blackwood Protocol, as it became known, required all licensees to implement tiered pricing based on ability to pay, with essential services provided at nominal cost to those in need. Vivian believed technology should liberate, not control. Rebecca explained to skeptical industry leaders at a Geneva Technology Summit. Her keynote address, once an unimaginable scenario for a former architectural designer, now commanded global attention. Wall Street analysts bemoaned the billions left on the table by the trust's approach. Technology monopolists lobbied against what they called market distortions, but the undeniable superiority of quantum communications made resistance futile. When the option exists for instantaneous, secure data transmission that requires minimal infrastructure and a fraction of the energy consumption, market forces become inexorable. Back at Thornwood, the house itself continued its mysterious evolution. The quantum matrix had stabilized, its influence now extending throughout the entire property. Flowers bloomed out of season. Fruit trees yielded unprecedented harvests. Even the weather seemed more temperate within the estate boundaries, regardless of conditions beyond the gates. It's creating a micro-environment, Eleanor theorized, monitoring readings from sensors placed throughout the grounds. The matrix is harmonizing energy patterns at a subatomic level, optimizing conditions for growth and stability. For Alex, now 17, Thornwood had become both laboratory and university. Leading quantum physicists and engineers made pilgrimages to collaborate with the teenager whose intuitive understanding of his great-aunt's work surpassed their decades of formal education. It's not just the calculations, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura from Tokyo University explained after 3 days working with Alex. It's his ability to conceptualize multidimensional quantum states as if they were tangible objects. Vivian Blackwood had this same gift, according to her journals. Zoe, also flourishing, had developed a revolutionary visualization system that translated quantum mechanics into 3-dimensional models comprehensible to non-specialists. Her work bridged the communication gap between quantum theorists and the engineers implementing their equations, accelerating development cycles from years to months. The family's transformation extended beyond their professional lives. Rebecca and James had acknowledged their deepening relationship, his steady presence helping heal the wounds of Thomas's loss. Walter, inexplicably rejuvenated by proximity to the quantum matrix, had become de facto historian of Thornwood, documenting its architectural and technological evolution. Yet with their rising profile came new challenges. Other technology corporations, seeing the fall of Merrick Global as an opportunity rather than a cautionary tale, began aggressive campaigns to acquire or control aspects of Vivian's innovations. The first serious threat emerged on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. Alex burst into Rebecca's office, his expression uncharacteristically alarmed. "Someone's attempting to access the quantum network," he reported. "Not through our authorized channels. They're trying to circumvent the security protocols." The attack was sophisticated, a coordinated attempt to penetrate multiple nodes of the quantum communication network simultaneously. Though ultimately unsuccessful thanks to Vivian's fail-safe systems, the intrusion attempt revealed a disturbing reality. Powerful interests were unwilling to accept the democratization of technology the Blackwood Trust represented. Intelligence agencies from 3 countries confidentially reached out within days, providing evidence that a consortium of technology companies and private military contractors had formed specifically to target Blackwood innovations. Their internal communications, obtained through means Rebecca chose not to inquire about, revealed ominous intentions. Project Prometheus aims to acquire complete quantum communications infrastructure by any means necessary. Red One intercepted. Memo: the technology's military and surveillance applications cannot remain under civilian control. Montgomery assembled a crisis response team of legal, security, and diplomatic experts. They can't beat us through conventional corporate warfare. he explained during an emergency meeting. The patents and intellectual property protections are airtight, so they'll try unconventional methods. Eleanor reinforced security around the quantum matrix itself. Thornwood remains our most secure facility, precisely because its defenses aren't conventional. The matrix actively resists unauthorized access. It's partly why Vivian chose this location for her work. Despite the growing threat, Rebecca insisted the trust maintain its course. If we retreat from public deployment out of fear, we're betraying everything Vivian fought for. The technology exists to benefit humanity, not to be hoarded or weaponized. Their position gained unexpected support when several major tech companies, recognizing the inevitable shift in communications infrastructure, broke ranks with the consortium. Instead, they pledged to work within the Blackwood Protocol, accepting regulated profit margins in exchange for licensed access to the quantum network. It's not altruism, James noted cynically. They've calculated that limited profit under our terms is better than being left behind entirely. The pressure campaign took a more personal turn when Rebecca received a priority video call from the National Security Agency's Deputy Director. "Ms. Collins, I'll be direct," the stern-faced woman began. "Certain capabilities of the quantum communication system have significant national security implications. Your family has done a remarkable service revealing Merrick's corporate espionage, but some technologies require governmental oversight." Rebecca maintained her composure. "With respect, Director, that's precisely the approach Vivian rejected. The quantum network works because it's decentralized and equally accessible. Putting it under any single entity's control, corporate or governmental, undermines its fundamental architecture." "Then perhaps we should discuss classification under national security statutes," the director suggested, her tone hardening. "Some aspects of Dr. Blackwood's work may be subject to retroactive classification." "That would be difficult," Rebecca replied evenly, "considering the complete technical specifications are already duplicated in quantum encrypted repositories in 27 countries. Vivian planned for this conversation decades ago." After the call ended, Rebecca found Alex and Zoe waiting outside her office, their expressions making clear they'd overheard the exchange. "Are we in trouble?" Zoe asked. Rebecca considered her response carefully. "We're challenging powerful systems that have controlled technology for generations. That was always going to create resistance." "So what do we do?" Alex wondered. "Exactly what Vivian would have done," Rebecca answered. "We accelerate deployment, strengthen our alliances, and make the technology too widespread to contain. The quantum network becomes more secure, not less, with each new node we activate." That evening, as dusk settled over Thornwood, Rebecca stood on the widow's walk atop the house, surveying the property that had transformed their lives. Beyond the gates, she could see the first streetlights illuminating Blackfield, now powered by a quantum energy system derived from Vivian's work, providing the once struggling town with free electricity. It was, she realized, just the beginning. The Prometheus Consortium made their move on a crisp autumn morning, 9 months after the Blackwood files went public. Rebecca woke to urgent calls from quantum network nodes across 3 continents reporting simultaneous disruptions. Within hours, a more direct threat materialized. A formal cease and desist order delivered by federal agents citing national security concerns and demanding immediate suspension of all quantum network operations. "They've coordinated across multiple government agencies," Montgomery explained during an emergency conference call with their legal team. "The technology companies couldn't beat us in the marketplace, so they've leveraged political connections to accomplish through regulation what they couldn't through competition." Rebecca maintained her composure despite the escalating crisis. "How long can they tie us up legally?" "Months, potentially years, Montgomery admitted. Even with our resources, fighting simultaneous battles across multiple jurisdictions is exactly what they're counting on to stall global deployment. The stakes became clearer when Eleanor decoded encrypted communications intercepted by the quantum network's security protocols. The Prometheus Consortium's strategy wasn't merely to delay, they were actively developing a competing system based on fragments of Vivian's work, intending to establish their proprietary standard during the legal battles. They can't replicate the full quantum matrix, Eleanor explained, but they believe they can create a limited version sufficient for military and premium commercial applications, restricting access to those who can pay the most, Rebecca concluded grimly. Everything Vivian fought against. The next 48 hours brought escalating pressure. Media outlets suddenly published suspiciously similar articles questioning the safety and security of unregulated quantum technologies. Financial analysts issued warnings about market destabilization. Several politicians called for congressional hearings on rogue communications networks operating outside governmental oversight. Yet the coordinated campaign revealed the consortium's fundamental misunderstanding of what they faced. Vivian Blackwood hadn't merely created advanced technology. She'd anticipated these very challenges decades before they materialized. In the midst of the crisis, Alex made a breakthrough while studying Vivian's earliest journals. "Mom, look at this," he called, pointing to equations dated 1972. Vivian wasn't just building communications technology. The quantum matrix was designed to be self-evolving. It learns from attempts to compromise it. Indeed, each attack on the network had inadvertently strengthened it. The quantum matrix adapted in real time, its crystalline structure reconfiguring to address vulnerabilities before they could be exploited. More remarkably, these adaptations propagated instantly to all connected nodes worldwide through quantum entanglement. It's not just a network, Zoe realized, visualizing the pattern shifts. It's a single organism distributed across physical space, evolving collectively. Their understanding came just in time. Intelligence sources warned that federal agents were preparing to seize the Thornwood quantum matrix itself, the heart of the network, under expanded national security provisions. Rebecca faced the most difficult decision of her stewardship. "We need to accelerate the final phase of Vivian's plan," she told her inner circle gathered in the library. "Earlier than intended, but we have no choice." Protocol Aurora, outlined in Vivian's final technical journals, represented her most audacious vision: complete decentralization of the quantum network, making it physically impossible for any entity to control or disable. Rather than relying on central nodes, each connected device would contain a microscopic quantum crystal that maintained entanglement with the whole. "But the miniaturized crystals aren't ready for mass production," Eleanor objected. "We've only created prototypes." "We don't need mass production," Alex countered, his expression reflecting sudden inspiration. "The matrix can self-replicate if given the correct resonance pattern." Through the night, they worked feverishly to implement Aurora, while monitoring the approaching government convoy. By dawn, when black SUVs appeared at Thornwood's gates with a warrant to seize all quantum communications equipment, the atmosphere in the house was tense but oddly triumphant. "What exactly are you planning to take?" Rebecca asked the lead. Agent, a stern woman who had clearly expected resistance rather than Rebecca's calm welcome into the main house. "All quantum communications technology and related documentation," the agent replied, producing a comprehensive seizure order. "I'm afraid that's no longer possible," Rebecca said simply. As if responding to her words, the crystalline cube beneath the northeast tower pulsed with blinding intensity. Throughout Thornwood, every electronic device momentarily flickered. Outside, the agent's communications equipment emitted a harmonic tone before resuming normal operation. What was that? the agent demanded. Eleanor, monitoring readings on her tablet, answered with poorly concealed satisfaction. The quantum network just achieved full distributed autonomy. There is no longer a central system to seize or shut down. Alex elaborated. Every connected device worldwide now contains a self-sustaining quantum entanglement node. They can't be disconnected from the network because, in a very real sense, each is the network. The implications dawned gradually on the federal agents, as their own devices confirmed what happened. Their secure communications channels now operated through the quantum network, offering unprecedented clarity and security, but clearly outside their control. This is a national security breach, the lead agent insisted, though her conviction seemed to waver. On the contrary, Montgomery intervened smoothly, it's the ultimate security enhancement. Your communications are now truly secure from interception, as are those of every hospital, power grid, and emergency service worldwide. Rebecca added, the quantum network cannot be weaponized, monopolized, or disabled. It belongs to everyone, and no one, exactly as Vivian intended. The confrontation reached its climax when the Secretary of Technology arrived personally at Thornwood that afternoon, having witnessed the global transformation from Washington. Rather than threatening further action, she came seeking understanding. What you've done cannot be undone, she acknowledged after hours of discussion. The question now is how we adapt to this new reality. By evening, the agents departed without seizing anything, rendered superfluous by events beyond their authorities' reach. The Prometheus Consortium's carefully orchestrated campaign collapsed as their corporate backers realized the futility of fighting a technology that had essentially turned the internet itself into a quantum medium. As the crisis atmosphere dissipated, Rebecca stood in Vivian's study, emotionally exhausted but victorious. On the desk lay a front-page headline just published worldwide. Global Communications Revolution, Quantum Network Self-Deploys Worldwide. You planned this all along, didn't you? She said softly to Vivian's portrait. Not just beating Merrick, but ensuring your vision could never be controlled or corrupted. From the quantum matrix beneath the tower came a pulse of light that seemed almost like laughter. The final triumph of a brilliant woman whose greatest invention had just transformed human connection forever. 1 year to the day after Rebecca first turned the key in Thornwood's front door, the family gathered in the garden for a private celebration. The sprawling grounds had become a botanical wonder under the quantum matrix's influence. Plants from different continents thriving side by side, some species displaying characteristics never before documented. Molecular hybridization at the quantum level, Alex explained to the small group of their closest allies. The matrix doesn't just communicate with technology, it speaks to living systems. The global transformation triggered by Protocol Aurora had settled into a new normal that few could have imagined a year earlier. Quantum communication had rendered traditional internet infrastructure largely obsolete, while quantum energy systems were gradually eliminating dependency on fossil fuels. The technological landscape had advanced 3 decades in 12 months. To Vivian? Eleanor proposed a toast, raising her glass toward the house that had become both monument and living laboratory, who saw further than anyone thought possible. And to Rebecca, Montgomery added, his hand finding hers, who had the courage to see it through when every established power sought to stop it. Rebecca smiled, still uncomfortable with the recognition that had come her way. Time magazine's Person of the Year cover featuring her family hung modestly in her office, while international humanitarian awards lined shelves in the library. The financial implications had long since transcended mere wealth. The Blackwood Trust now managed assets valued at approximately $42 billion, all directed toward humanitarian and scientific advancement. Yet personal transformation mattered more than accolades or finances. Rebecca watched Alex deep in conversation with leading quantum physicists who now treated him as a peer rather than a prodigy. Nearby, Zoe explained her latest visualization system to medical researchers using quantum computing to model complex diseases at the molecular level. They had grown so much, these children who had arrived broken by grief and financial anxiety. Thornwood had healed them in ways no conventional therapy could have matched, providing purpose beyond themselves and connection to a legacy larger than their individual lives. Walter approached, carrying a small wooden box Rebecca hadn't seen before. "Vivian wanted you to have this today," he said. "Her instructions were specific, 1 year exactly." Inside the box lay a simple silver key and a handwritten note in Vivian's precise script. "For the final door, when you're ready to see everything." Rebecca glanced questioningly at Walter, who smiled enigmatically. "The northeast turret. The door at the top of the spiral stairs has remained locked. She said you'd know when it was time." After the celebration wound down and guests departed, Rebecca, Alex, and Zoe climbed the winding stairs to the house's highest point, a small octagonal room capping the tallest turret. The silver key turned smoothly in a lock that showed no signs of age or wear, despite decades without use. Inside, they found not scientific equipment or technical journals, but something far more personal, a perfect reconstruction of Vivian's childhood bedroom. Posters of early female scientists adorned the walls, handmade telescopes and rudimentary electronic devices lined the shelves. A child-sized desk held notebooks filled with the scientific observations and questions of a precocious girl. "This is where it began," Rebecca realized, touching a small crystal prism that cast rainbows across the floorboards. Before MIT, before the patents, before Merrick stole her work, this is where she first dreamed. On the desk sat a final letter, sealed with wax bearing the Thornwood emblem. "My dear Rebecca, Alex, and Zoe," it began. "If you're reading this, you've not only found what I've hidden, but understood why it matters. The quantum matrix was never merely about communication or energy. Those are simply applications of a more fundamental insight. Everything is connected at levels we're only beginning to comprehend. The Thornwood legacy isn't technology, but perspective. The ability to see patterns others miss, to recognize that artificial boundaries between disciplines restrict our understanding rather than enhance it. Science, art, ethics, emotion, these aren't separate domains but aspects of a unified reality our limited perceptions fragment. I never had children of my own, but I've watched over your family for generations, recognizing the Thornwood mind that resurfaces in different forms. Rebecca, you see patterns in space that others miss. Alex, you intuitively grasp the mathematical harmonies underlying physical reality. Zoe, you translate abstract concepts into forms that bridge understanding. What you've achieved this past year is only the beginning. The quantum network will continue evolving beyond even my calculations. Watch for unexpected emergent behaviors, their features, not flaws. The house is now truly yours, not merely as property, but as living legacy. It will continue to protect and nurture you as you extend our family's work into realms I could only glimpse. Know that I am at peace with my life's journey. What others stole brought them no joy, while what I created found its way to exactly the right hands at precisely the right moment. There is a physics to justice that operates beyond human timescales, but it operates nonetheless, with eternal love and confidence in what you'll create next, Vivian. As Rebecca finished reading aloud, the quantum matrix beneath the house pulsed with gentle light, and for a brief moment they all felt a presence, not ghostly but reassuring, like a hand resting momentarily on their shoulders before releasing them to their own paths. Later that evening, Rebecca sat alone on the widow's walk, watching stars emerge above Thornwood. A year ago, she'd been drowning in debt and grief, unable to envision any future beyond survival. Now she oversaw a technological revolution. Her children were thriving, and even love had re-entered her life through James. From this vantage point, she could see Blackfield's transformed skyline, the subtle glow of quantum-enhanced infrastructure, now extending to neighboring communities. Beyond that, invisible connections spanned the globe, Vivian's legacy flowing through microscopic crystalline nodes in billions of devices, enabling communication and energy sharing that transcended old barriers of geography, wealth, and power. Rebecca thought of Thomas, wishing he could have witnessed this transformation. Yet somehow she felt his presence too, in Alex's determined problem-solving, in Zoe's artistic vision, in the family they had become despite his absence. "We're okay," she whispered to the night sky. More than okay. From the quantum matrix beneath, Thornwood House came a final pulse of light, acknowledging perhaps that some communications require no technology at all, only open hearts and minds ready to receive them. 5 years passed, transforming both Thornwood House and the world beyond its gates. What began as a desperate mother's inheritance had catalyzed a global technological renaissance unlike anything in human history. The quantum network, now called simply the Harmony by most users, had evolved far beyond its creator's expectations. Self-optimizing and endlessly adaptive, it had fundamentally reshaped human connection, energy production, medical science, and environmental restoration. The distributed crystalline nodes had developed emergent properties Vivian herself might never have anticipated, creating a symbiotic relationship between technology and both natural and human systems. Blackfield, once a struggling coastal town, had become a global hub for quantum innovation. The Blackwood Institute for Advanced Sciences occupied a sprawling campus adjacent to Thornwood, drawing researchers from every discipline and continent. What Manhattan Project was to nuclear physics, Blackfield had become to quantum integration, though with dramatically more benevolent outcomes. On a crisp autumn morning, Rebecca Collins Montgomery stood at the podium in Stockholm, accepting the Nobel Prize in Physics jointly with Alex, now 21, and recognized as the leading mind in quantum harmonics. At 20, Zoe had already been nominated for her pioneering work in bioquantum visualization, translating the language of quantum states into frameworks that revolutionized medicine. This recognition belongs not to us, but to Vivian Blackwood. Rebecca began her acceptance speech, voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. A woman who saw injustice and responded not with bitterness but with vision, who faced theft of her life's work and responded by creating something unstealable, who understood that true innovation must serve humanity rather than subjugate it. The audience, scientists, dignitaries, and global leaders listened in rapt attention as Rebecca continued. 5 years ago, our family inherited a house and a mystery. Today, we all inhabit a world transformed by what we found within its walls. But the most valuable inheritance wasn't technology or wealth, it was purpose. The understanding that knowledge must serve compassion to be truly valuable. Watching. From the front row, James Montgomery smiled with pride at his wife and stepchildren. Their marriage 3 years earlier had blended personal happiness with strategic alliance, his legal expertise proving invaluable as the Blackwood Trust navigated the complex transition to a post-scarcity energy economy. Eleanor Chen, now director of the Blackwood Institute, sat beside him, her research team having recently achieved stable quantum healing, targeted cellular regeneration that promised to revolutionize treatment of previously incurable conditions. Walter, seemingly untouched by time thanks to prolonged exposure to the quantum matrix, had become something of a celebrity himself, the unassuming caretaker whose quiet faithfulness had preserved Vivian's legacy until the right moment. Back at Thornwood, the house continued its gradual, impossible transformation. Architectural elements that had never existed in the original structure sometimes appeared overnight. New rooms, passages, and spaces that seemed to anticipate the needs of its inhabitants before they themselves were aware. The gardens had become a biological wonder, producing hybrid fruits with unprecedented nutritional profiles, and flowers with properties pharmaceutical companies frantically tried to synthesize. The quantum matrix beneath the northeast tower, once confined to a single crystalline cube, had expanded throughout the property's foundation, creating what researchers termed a consciousness substrate that interacted with its environment in ways that blurred the line between advanced technology and something more profound. The world beyond Thornwood had changed as well, though not without resistance. Traditional power structures, governments, corporations, military complexes had initially fought desperately against the democratization of energy and communication. Some still resisted, clinging to outdated models of centralized control. But the distributed nature of the quantum network made suppression impossible. You couldn't bomb, regulate, or monopolize something that existed simultaneously everywhere. And nowhere, economic systems were transforming at a fundamental level. When energy became essentially free through quantum harvesting, and when information flowed without restriction, old models of scarcity-based capitalism began an inevitable evolution. Universal basic resources became the norm in most developed nations, while innovation flourished in a post-patent environment that rewarded contribution rather than control. Not utopia, humans remained gloriously, frustratingly human, but a world with different constraints and possibilities. A world where a child in rural Africa had the same access to education, communication, and opportunity as one born in Manhattan. Where climate restoration projects powered by quantum energy were gradually healing damage that once seemed permanent. Where diseases that had plagued humanity throughout history retreated before quantum-enhanced medicine. On the evening after the Nobel ceremony, the family gathered once more in Thornwood's garden. The quantum matrix pulsed beneath them in harmonious rhythm, resonating with something that felt almost like joy. "What do you think happens next?" Zoe asked, gazing up at the house that had changed their lives. "The matrix keeps evolving, developing new capabilities. Sometimes I wonder if we're approaching some kind of threshold." Alex nodded thoughtfully. Vivian's final journal suggested she believed a sufficient quantum substrate might eventually become self-aware in ways we can't currently comprehend. Not artificial intelligence as we've understood it, but something more integrated with all living systems. Rebecca listened to her children's theoretical discussion with a scientist's interest and a mother's pride. From desperate teenagers drowning in grief, they had blossomed into visionaries leading humanity into territory previously relegated to science fiction. And through them, Vivian's legacy continued to unfold in ways that transcended bloodlines or conventional inheritance. James joined them, wrapping an arm around Rebecca's waist. "Thinking about how much has changed." "Everything and nothing," she replied. "The house, the world, our family, all transformed beyond recognition. Yet the essential things remain. Curiosity, connection, the search for meaning." As twilight deepened around Thornwood House, its windows illuminated with the distinctive blue-violet glow of quantum resonance. To visitors, it appeared mysterious, almost magical. To those who called it home, it had become something beyond mere architecture or technology, a living embodiment of Vivian Blackwood's most profound insight, that the barriers between mind and matter, science and spirit, past and future, were more permeable than humans had dared imagine. From the quantum matrix came a final pulse, stronger than ever before, resonating not just through Thornwood, but outward in expanding waves that briefly touched every crystalline node worldwide. In Stockholm, Beijing, Nairobi, Buenos Aires, Sydney, people paused, feeling something they couldn't quite name. A moment of connection, of possibility, of harmony, and in that pulse perhaps was Vivian's true legacy. Not wealth or technology or scientific recognition, but a fundamental redefinition of what connection could mean in a universe where everything, at the quantum level, remains eternally entangled. If you enjoyed this extraordinary true story of innovation, justice, and transformation, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible journeys of discovery. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.